All right, welcome back to the deep dive. This is the place where we take a whole stack of varied sources, articles, research papers, even some field notes, and try to distill it all down to the most surprising and essential truths you need to know.
Yeah, and today we are definitely strapping in for a fascinating journey. It's all about control, about storytelling, and really the fabrication of human reality itself.
That sounds ambitious.
It is, but the sources we've pulled for this are, well, they're surprisingly complementary, even though they come from totally different worlds.
Okay, lay it out for us. What are we looking at?
So on one hand, we have these really deep operational notes and detailed tool reviews from digital game designers. They're talking about collaborative world building for everything from live-action role-playing games, LRPs, to complex tabletop RPGs.
Okay, so that's the play side of things.
Exactly. And then sitting right alongside that, we have these intense, really critical analyses of reality television production, ethics, contestant screening, all of that.
Okay, so I have to ask the obvious question here. On the surface, what does designing, like a fantasy map for a game, something that's all about shared imagination, have in common with casting people for a high-stakes, high-drama show like Love is Blind or The Bachelor?
Well, that's the common thread. That's really the mission statement for this depth dive. We're looking at how complex human realities are structured and managed. We're examining the tools and the tactics that are used to intentionally design and, in some cases, enforce specific kinds of human interaction.
Ah, I see. So it doesn't matter if the goal is collaborative fun or, in the case of TV, highly profitable labor.
Precisely. The organizational challenges are just deeply, deeply similar.
So it's all about engineering and experience. If you're a game designer, you're structuring reality for, what, maximum fun, maximum
In
technique.
collective engagement, yeah.
But if you're a TV producer, you're structuring it for maximum drama, maximum outrage, and of course, high viewership. The underlying problem of managing all those human variables is the same.
It really is. I mean, just consider this as a starting point, an analogy. How similar are the project management needs of a LARP designer who's creating this rich, multi-layered game, with overlapping secrets, character backstories, special powers,
A huge amount of data to track.
a ton of data. And how similar is that to a reality TV producer who's building an unscripted, and I'm using very heavy air quotes on that word storyline, that needs to feel logical and dramatic across a whole season?
They both require just meticulous planning.
Meticulous planning, rapid content generation, some kind of version control, and really sophisticated management of what is essentially concurrent human input and emotional output.
That sets the stage perfectly. So we're going to start with the digital tools, the creative side, the people building worlds just for play, and then we'll pivot into the much more controlled, manufactured realities of television.
Where the stakes shift from shared fun to, well, reputation, mental health, and millions of dollars.
Let's get into it.
So first, the digital ecosystem. Because the software choices that collaborators make really define the limits of the reality they can build together.
And right away, our sources point out this foundational tension in any kind of collaborative work. It's the trade-off between accessibility, ease of use, and complexity.
Right. When you're trying to co-write a massive game or build a detailed world, you need high volume idea management, you need rapid communication, but you absolutely cannot afford to spend all your time just fighting with the platform.
You lose all your momentum.
You lose everything. And that initial brainstorming phase, that chaotic, that creative sprint where you just need to get ideas out of people's heads and onto some kind of shared digital wall.
Yeah, that needs to be as low friction as possible.
Exactly. Which brings us to the first tool mentioned, a really unique free service called idea boards.
Okay, idea boards. And its main selling point is just pure astonishing accessibility. You can create these collaborative digital note card or sort of post-it note walls, but the key thing is that nobody needs to log in.
Nobody. Not the person who creates it, not the people who contribute. There's no account, no email address needed. You just get a simple URL and you're in.
That's a huge deal. It just lowers that administrative hurdle to basically zero. You can get quick input from a scattered team without any of that, oh, I forgot my password headache.
It's a huge win for that initial burst. But that design philosophy, that low friction, it comes with a pretty significant cost.
And that cost is usability, right? Once you move past that first chaotic brainstorming session.
You got it. The big drawback is that Idea Boards doesn't really seem to have any robust export capabilities. The source material basically describes it as a disposable creative spark pad.
So you use it to generate momentum, but then you're stuck manually transcribing all those great ideas into something more permanent and more structured later on.
It's a fantastic starting engine, but it doesn't have the chassis for a long-term project.
Which means once that idea wall is full, you have to move to something else, something robust enough for tracking progress and managing actual tasks. And the sources mentioned Trello here.
Yeah, and while Trello wasn't, tested extensively by the authors of these notes, its whole structure just makes it an obvious next step for managing complex game design. It's built around those boards, lists, and cards.
And that lets you visually track progress.
Right. So let's say you're a LRP designer. You could set up a board for the whole game. You could have lists like plot points, NPC backstories, locations, secrets.
And each secret or character becomes its own little card.
Exactly. Then you can assign those cards to different writers, attach deadlines, use color-coded labels like red for urgent conflict, blue for magical item. It turns this huge abstract concept into an actual actionable workflow.
It brings clarity, and you desperately need that clarity when you move into the really high volume part, which is the collaborative writing itself.
Oh, for sure. And when it comes to the actual writing, the documents, the character sheets, the world, lore, the sources are unequivocal. Google Drive is the gold standard.
The gold standard. That's interesting because the hosts of the source material themselves mentioned being anxious about Google's, well, its notoriously unpredictable product lifecycle.
I mean, we've all been there. Google just kills products we love.
So if your entire massive LRRP relies on Drive, how do you deal with that risk, especially when the alternatives are apparently so painful?
Well, that fear is real, but the functionality it offers is just so essential that the risk is, often just accepted. The mitigation is usually aggressive third-party backups, frequent exports of key documents.
But the reason it dominates is that one killer feature.
Concurrent. Real-time online editing.
And that's something we kind of take for granted now, but its genius really becomes clear when you contrast it with other multi-editor systems, like online wikis, or what the tech-savvy designers might default to, source control systems like GitLab or GitHub.
That's where you hit what they call the merging problem. When you work in a system like Git, it's designed for source code, which is asynchronous. So two people edit the same file at the same time, they save it locally.
And then, when they try to upload their changes to the shared version.
Conflict. The system just sees a conflict. Instead of seeing the other person type in real time, you suddenly get this big block of text showing their changes and your changes, and you have to manually, painstakingly, pick which parts of which version you want to keep.
That sounds incredibly frustrating.
It's a nightmare, and these systems have all these different kind of weird merging behaviors to try and resolve it, and for non-technical people, it's just a massive barrier to entry. Drive just completely bypasses that pain. You see what the other person is typing as they type it. It's seamless.
And the flexibility of its sharing permissions is key too, right? You can share with editors who aren't even logged into a Google account.
Absolutely, which is so important for these large, often non-professional collaborations.
Yeah. Okay. So from writing documents, let's shift to communication and creating these digital spatial analogs, which are so crucial for online games where you need to feel like you're moving around.
And here, Discord stands out as this incredibly versatile and this is key totally free option.
Yeah, Discord has huge pros. It works on mobile and computer, which is great for accessibility. You can set up multiple audio and text channels.
Which users then leverage as analogs for physical spaces in the game world.
Right. So in an online LARP, you could have a tavern voice channel that's always open, a secret council chamber channel, and maybe a Whispering Alley text channel.
And the ability to move between them simulates physical movement. Plus, moderators can literally move users from one channel to another, which is like a game master pulling you aside for a private chat.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
But the sources are clear that Discord hit a wall, and it hits it hard when you need high-fidelity video.
That's its major constraint. It relies on peer-to-peer connections for video, and it just overwhelms people's upload capacity really fast. Try to video chat with more than one or two people, and you're going to have a bad time. Voice, though, is much more reliable.
And the other big problem is the lack of a global audio chat. If a moderator needs to yell, "The monster has arrived," to everyone.
They can't. They have to either message everyone or jump into every single channel one by one. It's a logistical nightmare in a time-critical moment.
And that need for spatial simulation leads us to these other platforms designed specifically for it, the spatial video platforms.
Yeah, these systems are explicitly trying to recreate that feeling of moving around a physical room where who you can hear is determined by where you are virtually.
And Gather.town is a prime example. You've got this detailed pixel art map. You move a little avatar around.
And when your avatar gets close to someone else's, your video and audio just connect automatically. It has a free tier for up to 25 people, which is great. And the map lets you see who's talking to who before you just jump in.
But it's not perfect.
Far from it. The drawbacks are pretty significant. It's computer only, so no mobile users. The avatars are super tiny, so it's hard to even tell who is who. And on big maps, people can literally get lost. They call it map anxiety.
Then you have the alternative, spatial chat, which sort of strips away the map and the avatars.
Right. It's the same idea. Proximity determines audio, but people are just represented by their video feed in a circle. It's conceptually simpler, more like a cocktail party than a dungeon. And the pricing is good, free for up to 3 rooms and 50 people.
But the sources stress a major drawback here for inclusivity.
A huge one. Because it relies entirely on visual proximity to connect audio, it's basically unusable if you or your players have visual impairments. The entire metaphor is visual.
And the experience of moving between conversations is described as really abrupt. You don't fade in, you just pop into existence.
Yeah, it's not smooth. And we can't ignore the big corporate systems here either, like Zoom and Microsoft Teams. Zoom gets a special mention for how gracefully it handles bad internet connections.
Which is a huge technical constraint for any virtual event.
And its push-to-talk function, which seems like a minor feature, is noted as a massive help.
Why is that so important?
Well, if you have a bad connection, any little blip in your mic can create this huge burst of static that just obliterates the conversation. Push-to-talk means your mic is only on when you're intentionally speaking. It's a simple way to manage the physical reality of everyone's different internet setups.
And Microsoft Teams, interestingly, is flagged as a superior system if your main concern is disability access.
That's a crucial insight. Because of the resources Microsoft puts into enterprise and government compliance, Teams often has more robust transcription, better screen reader compatibility, that sort of thing. It's also got that classroom view, which can help maintain a sense of shared space.
It's amazing how these technical constraints really do dictate the reality you're able to build. And speaking of constructed realities, let's pivot to the world where that control is used not for fun, but for profit.
Yeah, the transition here is sharp because the motivation shifts from, collaborative joy to managed profit. The tools we just talked about are for building realities in play. But in reality TV, that reality is built for the network's bottom line.
And they turn authenticity into this highly managed labor process.
Designed for maximum engagement, maximum drama, or, as some sources put it, engineered outrage.
And the foundation for both the game and the TV show is casting. But the goals are just fundamentally different.
Totally different. In scripted casting, you're looking for actors with professional malleability, people who can take direction. And crucially, you're looking for people who set a good tone. The sources say that the lead actors, like a Paul Rudd or a Will Ferrell, they set the collaborative tone for the whole set.
Right. No assholes.
Basically. But in unscripted TV, you're not casting for people who are easy to manage. You are casting for people who embody very specific, predictable archetypes and who are likely to generate, well, genuine but manageable conflict.
Like on a show like TLC's Smothered, you need those genuine, relatable, but also really unique and quirky relationship dynamics.
You need people who will give you heartfelt confessions and go on weird adventures. The authenticity has to be entertaining. It has to fit into a pre-existing narrative box.
And because the audience are all amateur sleuths now, scrutinizing everything, the risk management in casting has to be mandatory, not just a check-the-box screening.
Due diligence is everything. The cost of failure, a PR nightmare, a lawsuit, it's astronomical. And the depth of the check varies hugely. A dating show where people are encouraged to hook up is going to have way more invasive vetting than a one-off game show.
They have to prevent reputational harm and also block lawsuits, even from people who weren't even selected for the show.
And now, that means scouring a candidate's entire digital footprint. Photos, old fights, political stances, any digital breadcrumbs that could be weaponized later.
And this is where the sources say human screening is still valued way more than AI.
Oh, absolutely. Because a human can understand nuance. They get sarcasm. They can evaluate the tone in a video. AI just can't do that yet. It's a huge risk for a network to rely on AI for something this sensitive. It's not just about a criminal history. It's about narrative risk.
So once that cast is selected, the reality construction begins for real. And this is where As the sources put it, the incentives of the producers can become inherently corrupt.
It's all driven by that insatiable need for drama and high viewership. The tactics are meticulous. They'll manufacture scenes, like inventing themed parties on Below Deck with required costumes.
We're just orchestrating dramatic events by controlling the schedule or, the access to alcohol.
But the most revealing and frankly unsettling tactic is systematic isolation and constant surveillance. They're two sides of the same control coin.
Isolation is the primary tool. Tell us about this practice of putting the cast on ice.
It's from shows like Love Island USA. It's where producers will physically separate the cast members anytime the cameras are off. They literally coordinate their movements with walkie-talkies to make sure they never interact without a camera crew present.
That's genuinely astonishing.
Yeah.
Why go to such an extreme?
The goal is explicit. Prevent unscripted conversations. If drama happens off-camera, or worse, if they resolve a conflict peacefully off-camera, the intended storyline is ruined. It's about maintaining absolute narrative control.
So this is what they call the work of being watched. The constant surveillance isn't just to capture events, it's a disciplinary tool.
It's a tool to create malleability. The fear of constant scrutiny, which is instilled right from the start of casting, helps production exercise control. Participants know any private moment, any offhand comment could be edited into a character flaw.
The sources mention that on shows like Love Island, cameras are recording 204/7.
Even in the dark.
Even in the dark, while they're in bed. The surveillance is just normalized as the price of admission. And on shows like The Bachelor, it's even framed as this therapeutic, transformative experience.
How so?
Well, they bank all your past mistakes during the vetting process, and then your journey on the show is recorded as proof of your commitment to the process of finding love or whatever. But really, that footage is just banked for maximum dramatic payoff later. And that leads to the most psychologically manipulative part of this. The talking head technique.
This is where they weaponize the interview process itself. They use repeated, targeted questions during these marathon interview sessions, sometimes 8 to 10 hours a day, to induce emotional breakdowns or solicit content for storylines they've already decided on.
Can you give us a specific example of how that works?
Yeah, there's this really clear anecdote from a participant on Love is Blind. This person was confident in their relationship at first, but in their daily talking head interviews, they were relentlessly, repeatedly asked the same question. Do you feel like you are deserving of my love?
Wow, that's insidious.
It is. At first, they answered confidently, yes, of course. But after weeks of this, every single day, they started to question themselves. Why do they keep asking this? Did my fiancé say something? Are they seeing something? I don't. The technique literally manufactures self-doubt to get the on-camera breakdown they need for the story.
So it's not just getting them to say a line. It's about breaking down their confidence to make them more malleable.
Exactly. And the sources also say producers will just flat out prompt them with storylines or ask them to say this, exploiting the memory gaps that happen when you're exhausted and trying to remember something from weeks ago. People feel genuinely gaslit.
And all of this is happening in a physically punishing environment.
Oh, absolutely. The cost is high. Participants report 20-hour workdays with systematic deprivation of food, water, and sleep. It's not an accident. It's a tactic to reduce resistance and increase emotional vulnerability.
20-hour workdays, how is that even legal?
Well, they're often classified as independent contractors, which is part of the whole exploitative structure. And if they try to leave, they can be coerced into staying with legal threats, massive financial penalties for breaking their contract.
And that brings us to the biggest tool of all for maintaining control, the legal silencer. Non-disclosure agreements, NDAs.
They are everywhere in reality production. Their core function is to legally codify silence about what really happens behind the scenes. Secrecy is the ally of harm, and the NDA prevents participants from speaking out about bad labor practices, trauma, or how the sausage gets made.
It creates what the sources call the exploitative bargain.
That's the central concept. The participant gives up fundamental control over their private moments, their image, their narrative, in exchange for social capital and the potential for fame and income. The whole power imbalance relies on this legally enforced silence.
And we've seen the consequences of that silence play out publicly.
For sure. When a controversy breaks, like the Rachel O'Connell incident from The Bachelor, the NEA prevents the participant from speaking out in a timely way. By the time they can issue an apology weeks later, the delay just makes the whole thing more explosive and seem less genuine.
So the production's control of the narrative is more important than the participant's own reputation.
Absolutely. Because the ultimate goal isn't just to make a TV show, it's to generate a post-show engagement cycle that keeps making money.
Which is the perfect segue to the influencer pipeline. Reality shows have become these hyper-efficient factories for turning normal people into social media stars overnight.
It's an incredible synergy. The show gives them immediate exposure to millions and, crucially, an emotionally attached fan base that feels like they know them intimately. That creates way more powerful engagement than a typical lifestyle influencer could get.
And that engagement is what they can turn into real income through sponsorships, way more than they ever made on the show itself.
But the market is shifting. The sources point out that while newer streaming shows like Love is Blind still generate huge follower counts, the ROI for older franchises is declining.
Why is that?
It seems to be a demographic shift. The Bachelor, for example, has an older fan base that's just less likely to follow contestants on Instagram or TikTok. The follower gains for recent leads are way lower than they were just a few years ago.
Which raises the question, why would anyone go on a show where you don't get paid much, you're put under intense psychological stress, and the fame payoff isn't even guaranteed anymore?
And that's where the producers have to double down. The answer seems to be to intentionally engineer outrage. Outrage is the cheapest form of promotion, and it drives massive engagement.
This feeds into the rise of sleuthing culture. Fans actively digging up contestants' secrets, past relationships, cheating, old social media posts.
And the show validates this behavior. When a scandal breaks online, they'll often bring that online discourse right into the show, usually at the reunion.
It creates a positive feedback loop.
Exactly. The show acknowledges the gossip, which validates the sleuthing, which encourages viewers to dig even deeper next season. It keeps the narrative messy and engaging long after filming is over.
It's a masterclass in engineering spectacle for profit. Okay, now let's shift back from that engineered drama to the intentional design of play. How do creators engineer reality not for cash, but for meaning and a truly engaging experience?
A great place to start is with a foundational concept in tabletop gaming, the reevaluation of what it means to fail. For decades, failure in a game like D&D was just boring and punitive.
Oh, I have vivid, painful memories of playing Dungeons & Dragons 3.5. You wait 20 minutes for your turn in combat, you do all the math, you roll the dice, and you miss. And the result is just nothing happens.
Exactly. Nothing happens. And that lack of consequence is what penalizes players and leads directly to a behavior known as power gaming.
Can you define power gaming for us?
Yeah, power gaming is when a player focuses obsessively on optimizing their character's stats and rules to maximize success, often at the expense of the story or group fun. And they do it because those older systems teach you that failure just means wasting your time. So the motivation to eliminate failure becomes overwhelming.
But newer games, like Dungeon World, actively challenge that idea.
Oh, Dungeon World is a masterpiece of design in this regard. Its whole purpose is to maximize tension and excitement no matter what the dice say. It's moving away from simulating physics and toward maximizing fun.
So failure doesn't just stop the action.
It advances the narrative, but in a negative or complicated way. If you try to kick down a door and fail, the GM doesn't just say, "The door is still closed."
They'd say what? The door is closed, but you made a huge noise and now the guards are coming.
Exactly. Or, you kicked the door, but now your leg is stuck and you're exposed. The player's choice is honored, but the failure complicates things and creates new drama. It transforms failure into a hilarious and deadly comedy of errors.
Which maximizes player agency. It doesn't feel like you're being punished for a bad roll.
It feels like the story is unfolding because of your choices. And that design of psychological impact leads us right into the cultural construction of fear. Why does horror so often fail?
Good question.
Well, according to our sources, it's for two main reasons. Either it's just poorly executed, cheap jump scares, or, more interestingly, the premise of what's supposed to be scary is something you just don't personally fear.
So the best horror has to be able to translate very specific, maybe personal or gendered anxieties into something universal.
The classic example is the Alien franchise. The sources describe how it takes the visceral body horror of pregnancy and translates it so that people who can't physically get pregnant can still understand why it's terrifying.
How does it do that?
Through those primal fears, pain, mutilation, death, the violation of your own body, the facehuggers and chestbursters literalize the anxiety of having something alien and destructive growing inside you.
So it translates a gendered physical fear into a universal psychological fear. And the sources mention a TTRPG that does something similar for feminine psychological horror.
That would be the game Bluebeard's Bride. It's praised for successfully translating a specific kind of feminine horror, the fear of social and marital powerlessness within a patriarchal structure, into something that resonates with everyone.
So if Alien is about the body, Bluebeard's Bride is about the terror of social submission and vulnerability.
Exactly. And this leads us to probably the most complex point in our sources, which is about specific male psychological fears, particularly ones embedded by certain American cultural or religious subcultures.
And we need to be careful here to report on the cultural context without endorsing it.
Absolutely. The analysis in the source material is that within a specific conservative subset of American Christian culture, men are often taught that they are inherently lustful and potentially powerless to restrain themselves, that women are responsible for not tempting them.
Which, from the male perspective in that belief system, would create immense psychological pressure.
It would be genuinely horrifying. You're being told you are fundamentally flawed, that you might lose control to this powerful force inside you, and this deep-seated fear of lacking control over your own behavior. That's a profound psychological vulnerability.
And the sources connect this directly to why a central conflict in an older RPG, Vampire, the Masquerade, resonated as real horror for some men, but just tragedy for others.
You're talking about the fear of the beast inside you. In Vampire, the curse is that you're a monster with these predatory desires that could take you over if you lose willpower.
So for men who grew up internalizing that cultural narrative, that their own desires are monstrous and uncontrollable, the vampire beast wasn't just a fantasy trope.
It was a very real, deep-seated psychological fear. The beast metaphor mapped perfectly onto their cultural anxiety about their own self-control. It turned the game from a fantasy tragedy, oh, it's sad that I'm a vampire, into genuine, visceral horror. My own core identity might be evil, and I could lose control and destroy everything I love.
That's a staggering insight into how personal background dictates how we experience a story.
It's the ultimate collaboration between the text and the reader's psychology. Now, just to clarify some history, the sources give a neat background on LRP styles.
Okay.
The term theater-style LRP was coined in the 90s to differentiate a new type of game from the older adventure-style LRPs.
Oh, what was the key difference?
Adventure-style was more like live-action D&D. It was about interacting with the environment, solving puzzles, fighting monsters. Theater-style, by contrast, was focused almost entirely on the interactions between players. The drama came from player-to-player conflict and negotiation.
Like improv theater without an audience.
Exactly. And within that, you get the term parlor LRP, which is just a smaller version of that.
Right.
5 to 12 pre-written characters, played in 1 or 2 rooms, focused on a single, intense social conflict.
So we've gone from the high-tech tools of collaboration to the high-stakes labor of television, and now to the deep psychological mechanics of play. Let's try to put all these threads together.
So after all that, what does this all mean?
I think it means that every reality we consume, whether it's a game we play with friends or a TV show we binge, is a carefully calibrated and intentional experience.
The level of design and control is just astonishing. From choosing a low-friction tool like idea boards, to designing game mechanics in Dungeon World to make failure exciting, to casting specific people who will embody drama archetypes for a network show, the entire human experience is being engineered.
And the most important takeaway for me is that tension between the constructed narrative and the authentic human response. In the world of play, that response is agency and emotional engagement. In the world of TV for profit, that response is often the mental health trauma we hear about from participants.
And we are seeing the cultural response to that now. The audience is getting savvier about the ethical cost of their spectacle. You see it in things like the Bachelor Diversity campaign, which demands better representation, or the increasing scrutiny on those inhumane labor conditions.
People are starting to recognize the difference between engineered spectacle and human exploitation.
Which leads us to our final provocative thought for you, the listener. Given the work done by reality TV participants, the selling of their emotional vulnerability, their conflicts, their drama generates massive profit and is often marketed back to them as a therapeutic, transformative experience. What does it mean for you as a consumer when the price of your entertainment is the often uncompensated or psychologically exploited labor of the cast? Think about that responsibility the next time outrage drives you to watch a reunion show or follow a new scandal.